About 2 years ago, I released a video talking about a former NASCAR driver named Shane Mill. Although he was a talented yet aggressive driver, his career was very short in the NASCAR scene. This was due to the fact that he failed multiple drug tests during his time in NASCAR and was banned for life. This without a doubt took a big hit on Shane Mill's racing career. However, he never gave up on his passion of racing, as he continued onward in racing in both the USAC series and even had an offer to race in the Indy Lights, but sadly suffered a devastating accident that left him permanently paralyzed. Even though Shane Mill suffered some of the worst luck in his racing career, both inflicted and non-inflicted, Mill never seemed to have lost his love for motorsports. He continued to field race cars and even had a podcast talking about his career just a couple years prior, truly making the most out of a terrible situation. But what if everything went in the opposite direction, and Shane Mill decided that there was no coming back from his controversy from NASCAR? Well, sadly, we don't need to wonder, because we saw what exactly would happen with the tragic case of another Busch Series driver at the time. This is the story about a driver who had everything and lost it all, only to never bounce back. Today, we dive into the tragic downfall of Kevin Grubb. Hi, my name's Vanillawafers, and I am the 2025 Liquid Death Pro Driver. It has come to my attention that only 7% of the population knows that Liquid Death offers iced tea drinks. This is unacceptable. So for this next ad, I am going to be showing only 93% of the screen for the majority that do not know about Liquid Death iced tea. Thanks to the amazing taste of Liquid Death iced tea, I now have the power and energy to— Wait, you're putting the bar over the Liquid Death can? You can't do that. Put it somewhere else, please, just anywhere. Oh, real funny, Charlie. You got jokes? Well, I got a joke for you. Come here. Hey, this is Vanillawafers, and we decided that showing 93% of the screen is not a good idea. Instead, we're going to do the exact opposite and only show 7% of the screen, so that way you guys don't even know what's going to happen next. What's up, everybody? It's Vanillawafers here, and we're going to do something incredible today. For the first time ever, we are going to do a backflip in the Liquid Death machine, and you're going to see it right here in this ad. Wow, look at this! It's the coolest thing ever! For the last 7 seconds, we're just going to advertise Liquid Death iced tea and just call it good. Make sure to drink some Liquid Death iced tea with 6 different flavors, 30 calories, and much less sugar than the rival brands. It tastes so good! Hashtag murder your thirst! Ah! Our story begins in a little small town called Mechanicsville, Virginia. Although a little known town with a population that has never surpassed over 40,000, it held 2 young prospects in the early 90s that were making a name for themselves in the late model division. Wayne and Kevin Grubb were a pair of brothers that ran under their father's team while dominating the late model scene. It wouldn't take long for the duo to eventually take a crack at one of NASCAR's higher divisions with the Craftsman Truck Series at Richmond Raceway. The track was only 10 minutes away from their hometown, so it was no surprise that they would make their first ever attempt in the sport at the racetrack. Both brothers were able to qualify for the main show, with Wayne qualifying 13th and Kevin qualifying 8th. Although neither led laps in the race, many were immediately impressed by the younger driver Kevin Grubb, as he finished 18th in the rain-shortened event and stayed on the lead lap through the entire race. 3 weeks later, the duo would reappear on the entry list for the Martinsville event, where they both qualified for the race, but unfortunately Kevin wrecked out early in the event, negating the driver to a 35th place finish. Although a mixed bag of results, Grubb Motorsports decided that the following year the team would not only return to run a majority of NASCAR races, but they would mainly be focused at running in the Busch Series in 1997, thus starting Kevin Grubb's career in NASCAR. Between 1997 and 1998, Grubb Motorsports ran one car with both brothers racing in the car throughout the season, minus super speedways and road courses. Although William Odell Grubb was a wealthier man thanks to his crane service rental company, it wasn't enough to run both his sons at the same time. No matter, as each brother did as much as they could with their father's equipment in hopes to turn the heads of folks in the garage area. For 1997, both drivers struggled to make and finish races, having their only highlight being a 5th place finish with Wayne Grubb. It would be 1998 where Kevin Grubb started to find his footing in the Busch Series. In just 16 starts, the then 19-year-old scored 5 top 10 finishes. However, it was the 26th race on the schedule where all eyes were on Kevin Grubb. On September 19th of 1998, the MBNA Gold 200 would see Kevin Grubb get the pole in his family-owned number 52 car, a monumental accomplishment for such a small team. It wasn't a random fluke either, as the team came to the track with a lot of speed and a great chance to win it all that Saturday afternoon. Although he was very close, it was Mac Kenseth that dominated the race in his number 17 Lycos machine. There were moments where the 52 car had a great opportunity to take the victory away, but unfortunately for Kevin, it just wasn't meant to be. Even though it was a bitter second place finish, Kevin Grubb grabbed the attention of many in the garage area thanks to his gutsy performance. And at the end of the 1998 season, Bruco Motorsports signed on the Mechanicsville native to run in their number 37 car full-time at the start of the 1999 season. Bruco Motorsports was not a top-tier team in the then Busch series, but it was a step up from running in his family's team, as they were struggling to just bring one car to the racetrack. The time that Kevin Grubb spent with Bruco Motorsports was a mixed bag to say the least. In his first season, Kevin finished 17th in the points with 5 top 10 finishes, but also the same amount of DNQs. His second season was better than the first with the same amount of top 10s, but still had 1 DNQ. Kevin managed to finish 13th overall in the standings. His third year with the team, he made every single race, recorded 3 third-place finishes, but only managed to finish 14th in the point standings. Again, this was a mid-tier team, so the finishes we saw out of Kevin Grubb were respectable. However, the team thought differently after the 2001 season, as Bruco Motorsports decided not to sign Kevin Grubb back onto the team, and instead opted for Jeff Purvis to drive their equipment. A disappointing outcome for Grubb, as he was left without a ride for the first 2 races of 2002. But of course, he wasn't going to be kept on the sidelines for long, as a newer team decided to pick him up in the 3rd race of the season. A fairly new team known as Team Bristol Motorsports started in the Busch Series in the middle of the 2001 season. After the first 2 races of 2002, the team decided to drop Kelly Denton from their ride, who admittedly struggled with the team, in favor of Kevin Grubb to drive their number 54 Chevrolet. This turned out to be a great fit for Kevin Grubb, as by the 3rd race with the team, the then 23-year-old challenged the leaders near the end of the 2002 Bristol race, only to have an illy timed spin out to take those chances away near the end. It didn't deter Kevin Grubb, however, as the driver continued to have consistent finishes inside the top 20 throughout the first 14 races of the season. Team Bristol Motorsports was so impressed by Kevin Grubb's performance that they even produced a cup car for the driver to attempt the 2002 Pontiac Excitement 400 at his home track in Richmond. Unfortunately, Kevin spun out during his qualifying lap, so he was not able to qualify for the event. There was still hope though that within the next year, Kevin Grubb and the 54 team were going to attempt more races in the Cup Series and fulfill Kevin's dream of running in NASCAR's highest division. Sadly though, Team Bristol Motorsports had different plans. At the end of the 2002 season, after scoring 6 top 10 finishes, the 54 team decided to go a different path with a new driver and not re-sign Kevin Grubb back behind the wheel, making this the 2nd year in a row where he was dropped from the team without notice. This no doubt bothered the Virginia native of Grubb, as this took away his best chance to run in the NASCAR Cup Series, a decision that eventually backfired on Bristol Motorsports, as the driver they planned to sign on didn't come together, and the team shut down after the 10th race of the season, which was ironically at Richmond Raceway. For the 2003 season, Kevin had fallen back to a part-time ride with Carroll Racing. This season could only be described as a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of season, as in the final 10 races with the team, Kevin scored 9 top 20 finishes. However, there were 7 races in a row where he finished 25th or worse due to engine issues or getting caught up in crashes. Team Carroll would shut down after the 2003 season, leaving Kevin Grubb again without a ride. As bleak as everything looked, there was still light at the end of the tunnel for Kevin, as it was announced that he was going to run a part-time schedule for a team known as Renzi Motorsports, a team that found victory lane multiple times the season prior. So perhaps this was Kevin's big break to prove what he could do behind the wheel and maybe even collect his first victory in the Busch Series. That sadly never happened.
All right, Jeff, this week NASCAR announcing the indefinite suspension of 25-year-old driver Kevin Grubb for violation of the substance abuse policy. Grubb will remain suspended until he meets NASCAR's terms and conditions, including counseling and periodic random testing.
In March of 2004, Kevin Grubb was given a random drug test based on reasonable suspicion and failed. The drug was not given out when the news broke, but it appeared to be oxycodone, in which he ranked positive for. This led to the driver being suspended indefinitely until he could meet NASCAR's terms and conditions, including randoms and counseling. This was devastating news for the Virginia driver, as it basically cost him an opportunity to run with a team that was victorious in the years past. After the news was released, Kevin Grubb had this to say:
"Right now, I gotta take care of myself. I gotta get some counseling and get myself straight before worrying about anything else. You play with fire, you get burned sometimes. I know the mistake I made, and I have to fix it and make sure it doesn't happen again."
Now, it's unclear if he was abusing the painkillers or not during the time of his drug testing. In fact, people argue that he received it because he had his wisdom teeth removed. But as many are aware, oxycodone is a powerful opioid pain reliever, and one that can be very addictive if not handled properly. Is that what was going on with Kevin Grubb? It's hard to say, but either way, it led to him missing the next 2 years of racing in NASCAR's highest divisions. 27 months later, Kevin Grubb reappeared on the entry list for the 2006 Federated Auto Parts 300 at Nashville, driving for MacLeod Motorsports. When Kevin made his return, he stated that the thought about coming back wasn't even in his head until he knew he was ready to come back.
"I went through a lot before I made that decision. I wanted to make sure I was right before I took that second chance."
His return to the sport was fairly short for the 2006 season, as he ran 5 races for MacLeod Motorsports with a best finish of 10th, along with 4 races in the Truck Series with Billy Below Motorsports with a best finish of 14th. It was a long shot, but maybe he could somehow bounce back from this horrible setback from 2 years ago, as the next race he entered in with MacLeod Motorsports was at Richmond Raceway, the same track he started his NASCAR career in 1996. This, however, would be where it all ended for the Virginia native.
That turn is car in the wall already. Kevin Grubb, and it didn't take long.
At the very start of the race, Kevin Grubb was involved in a wreck in the tri-oval on lap 1 of the race. It wasn't even his fault, as a jam-up forced the driver to brake, causing Kenny Wallace to rear-end him, leading to Grubb to overcorrect and hit the outside wall. The hit was hard enough to daze the driver, along with ending his night early in less than a mile. As he was taken to the care center, NASCAR approached the driver and demanded for him to take a drug test, in which he refused. According to Grubb, he was so dazed from the wreck itself that he hardly remembers anything from that weekend, let alone NASCAR asking him for a drug test. This didn't sit well with the NASCAR officials, and right after Kevin Grubb refused the drug test, he was suspended once again from running in NASCAR. After this second suspension, Kevin Grubb was absolutely devastated by the news.
"Unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. When they said that I failed the drug test and was suspended indefinitely, honestly, it felt like my life was coming to an end."
Although he never took the second drug test, NASCAR equaled it to a positive result. Jim Hunter, the vice president at the time, made it clear that they were not going to budge on their decision and that they were, quote, "done" with Kevin. It was rudely apparent that Kevin's career in NASCAR was over. Although he pleaded his case about his mind being foggy and that he more than likely suffered a concussion from the incident, NASCAR told him to talk to Dr. David Black, the infamous doctor in charge of NASCAR's drug testing. And I'm sure you know how well that went. Dr. Black never returned any of Kevin Grubb's phone calls. It seemed like the journey for Kevin in NASCAR was over, and it ended in the worst way. Wrecking out on lap 1, having a concussion, and being suspended for something that he doesn't even remember being asked to do. Hopefully somehow, some way, he could find a way to bounce back in life and pursue something new like Shane Mill did. At least that's what we were hoping for. On May 6, 2009, Kevin Grubb checked into Alpine Motel by himself for one night. A rather odd thing for him to do, as the hotel was located in Richmond, Virginia, right by his hometown. The following morning, the manager noticed that he never checked out from his stay and decided to investigate his room. Turned out, he never left the hotel room. The manager found Kevin Grubb on the bed with a gunshot wound to the head. It was clear that Grubb took his own life on May 6, 2009. How could something like this happen? How could a driver who was almost on top of the world do this in a random hotel next to his hometown? Well, sadly, there were plenty of signs that led to this moment. Obviously, the NASCAR suspension affected him the most, as his dream was taken away in a blink of an eye. Can Kevin be blamed for the first drug test fail? Maybe. But the second one appeared to be a situation almost out of his control, as it was confirmed later that week that the driver suffered a concussion, and as we have seen on this channel, concussions can cause major issues for a driver's decision making immediately after. Speaking of concussions, it wasn't the only one that the driver suffered, as he endured many during his time in his career. The earliest one being in 1998 at Gateway, driving the number 43 car for Curb Racing.
His crew tells me that he got his bell rung. It was woozy getting out of the ambulance. He went into the care center. We hope to get an update in a little while, but at least to get out of the car under his own power.
He also suffered a hard crash at Dover in 2002, where the 31 slammed into him while he was stalled out on the track, causing him to miss the next two races. And of course, the 2006 incident at Richmond. With all these concussions, it could have potentially played a significant role with him making a horrific, irrational decision. Then comes the third sign, which was his depression. It wasn't talked about much, but Kevin Grubb suffered severe depression during his time racing in the sport. He showed signs of it while going through counseling, while racing, and after racing. Now, many of us, including myself, have gone through depression in our lives, and believe me, it's not easy. If a person doesn't have the right help and support group around them, then it can fester into something far worse than what anyone can imagine. I can't say if Kevin Grubb had the right support group or not because I wasn't there, but I can definitely understand where his depression came from, including the suspension of racing and also losing friends like Adam Petty and Ricky Henrik to horrific incidents during his time in racing. Regardless of the reasoning, Kevin Grubb did what he did, and sadly, he is no longer here on this planet, leading to one of the more sad endings to a NASCAR's driver's life. I think it goes without saying, but mental health is one of the most important things to pay attention to for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're on top of the world in racing, or just an everyday person like you or me. Mental health is so important and should never be overlooked. We see the focus of it in NASCAR today, but unfortunately it was not taken as seriously back then. Is there anyone in particular we can blame for this incident? I mean, maybe, but it's not going to change anything. All we can do is learn from our mistakes and press forward. I hope that NASCAR is taking the bigger steps in looking at mental health to make sure no other drivers in the future make that tragic decision like Kevin Grubb did in 2009. And hopefully, we have all learned to not take someone's mental state for granted. Some people can have the worst things happen to them and still bounce back, like Shane Mill has been able to do after his horrendous incident. But not everyone is like that, and unfortunately we saw the opposite side of what could happen to a driver if they were suspended by NASCAR and could never get back on their feet. Sadly, that is the story of the once promising NASCAR Busch driver, Kevin Grubb.